Hey everybody, this video is going to be me showing you how to modify the default files that I provided. Basically the tool files, the operation defaults, and the configuration file. So these are useful things that can help make things easier for you when you're programming, so you don't have to change the defaults that Mastercam gives you every single time you program a part. I showed this in class, but you might be like me and don't remember every single thing you see or hear. So let's get into it. The first thing is, if you go over here in your toolpath manager, in your machine group, if you go to files, you're going to see a list of files. So these are your machine definition and your control and your post processor. We're not going to mess with that stuff today. We're going to come down here a little bit lower. We're going to go to libraries. Alright, and so the first one is the tool library. So if I open that, you can see this mill inch. That is the tool library that I've given you. So if I go in here just to one of my tool paths and I go to my tools here, so these are the tools that we've taken out of the library. Now, the file that I gave you has the same name as the default mill tool list in Mastercam. So I haven't really taken anything out of the default tool list. I've just added some things in. And you'll notice that by these ones that have a -AL or a -STL, those are just tools that I modified that have some kind of preset speeds and feeds that I typically use. So anytime if you want to modify your tool list, you can come in here and you can do a right click and you can go here to the tool manager. Alright, and so the tool manager, you have two windows. In the lower window is the tool library that you're using, so that's the mill inch tool database that I gave you. Alright, and that shows you the path of where it's located. And then up here in the top, these are the tools that are in your program currently. So if you happen to make a new tool in your while you're programming your part, then it shows up in here, and then you can highlight that tool and hit this down arrow and it will copy it into your tool database. Then when you hit the green check, it'll ask you if you want to save it, and you say yes, and then the next time you want to use that tool, it'll be in your library. Alright, so that's pretty much it for tools. If I go ahead and double click on my chamfer mill, you'll see that I did take that tip diameter as a 0, and that's why everyone's having an issue with their cube. So one of the most important things when you're using software to program your parts is that your tools here need to match what's happening in real life at the machine. When they don't match, then you're going to have some issues. So anyways, this is the chamfer mill that I modified from the default Mastercam one. So again, it's got the sharp point, it's got two flutes, and I've kind of preset the speed and feed for aluminum, and that's why it's called -AL. Right, so if I were to go ahead and select library tool, and if I filter over to my chamfer mills, okay, you'll see that I also have a 1/4 inch chamfer mill for steel. Okay, And so if I click that one real quick, then you can see it's got a different set of speeds and feeds for steel. So alright, so delete that out of there real quick. Alright, so what's the next thing? So we did tools, and next will be, go back to my libraries here, tools, so operations. We don't mess with operation, we mess with the operation defaults, right? So that was the, kind of showed that a little bit, but if we come over here and we click edit defaults, right? So this is where I can come in and I can choose any one of these default, any one of these tool paths, right? These are all the tool paths up here that I can use to machine my part, and then in here I can modify the defaults. So if I come in here and I go with cut parameters, right? So my default is wear comp 2D. Let's see, lead in, lead out, right? So if you notice, the default in Mastercam is like 100% length, 100% radius, and a 90-degree sweep. So my default, I changed it to 40, 40, and 60. So it still gives me a nice lead in, but it's, you know, not quite as big as the default. Alright, multi-passes. So, you know, normally I use a contour for a finish pass. And so typically with a finish pass, I'll do the finish pass and then a spring pass. So I added that into my defaults, because more often than not, that's what I do. Alright, linking, everything is absolute. My coolant is on by default. So those are just a few of the things that I've changed in that toolpath. So like I said, you got pockets, you got drilling, facing. So facing is another one, right? We had the issue where the default Mastercam leaves the 50 thousandths on the floor here in the cut parameters, so obviously I've taken that out. I've trimmed up the overlaps here from the defaults as well. So anyways, all that stuff you can change, and all that information is stored in that file. And again, that file is located in the public documents, shared Mastercam, mill, and ops. So it's the mill inch. Again, this is the same name as the default Mastercam one. So I have, you know, just basically overwritten it. If you're worried about that, you could save your default one as a different name and then load mine in. Make your own changes, whatever you want to do. Alright, so there's that. And last thing is the config file. So the config file, so that is file configuration, and so that has to do with again, things like reversing the mouse wheel, and what does the middle button on the mouse do? Does it pan or rotate? Like how the screen looks, the colors, all that sort of thing. That's what your config file controls. And the config file is the only file that we are messing with that that actually doesn't go in the shared documents folder. And that is because, you know, different users might want to have their own different configuration. So that file is actually stored in the documents for the particular user. And so that's where that goes. Alright, so there's that. And then the last thing is, you'll see, like in my videos and stuff, a lot of times I use, I do this right click position, but that's not in here by default in Mastercam. So again, that is another thing that you can change if you go to File Options, and then you go here to the context menu. Context menu is another name for right-click menu. So when you're in the graphics screen and you do a right-click, the context menu is what pops up. All right, and so you can see all the options here on the right that show up when you right-click. So down here at the bottom, you see I have position, right? So the way that you add that in is you come over here, and you would just you can sort of filter here, but if I just usually choose like all commands, and then it's all alphabetical, so if you scroll down to the P section, LMNO, P, over here, and then position is right there. So you would click on the position, and then you would click add, and then you would click OK, and it might ask you if you want to save it. You'd say yes, and then when you do the right click, you'd be able to choose position. And so that's another little thing that you can modify and make personal in Mastercam. Alright, so this one, hope you enjoyed that video. See you in class.